What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. Today, we've got a nice mix of some conference realignment, aftermath from the Pac-12 disaster, and on-field reaction to Week 6 in the Big 12, which was pretty loaded. And I think we're starting to figure some things out about some teams that may be on their way out and not able to recover this year. Looking at you, Baylor and TCU, and teams that are on their way up, ascending, like the Oklahoma Sooners. I see you in there, Don. How about some OU love? There will be plenty of OU love today because Dillon Gabriel and company earned it. Absolutely earned it at the Cotton Bowl with a ballsy drive, man. That 75-yard touchdown drive from Dillon Gabriel earned my respect 10 times over after I was certainly I wouldn't say like a detractor or a doubter in Dillon Gabriel. I just did not believe he had that in him. I didn't believe he was an upper tier college football quarterback. And after that performance in that spot against that kind of opponent, I think he deserves a ton of credit and proved his spot there. And Oklahoma and Brent Venables have certainly acquitted themselves very well after the disaster that was last season. So there's that. You got teams ascending like Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and Mike Gundy, perhaps saving their season against K-State. And my Wildcats, man, I don't know what the hell's going on. I suddenly feel dreadful, horrible about the season and where things are going right now after that game on Friday night in Stillwater. So anyway, outside of that, we start today, and we will start today with this Utah report. And it's thanks to our good friend, John Canzano, who got the report of who it was that actually put out there that $50 million figure that seemed to really doom the Pac-12 in their negotiation with ESPN. We all remember this. There was a report that one of the university presidents had a faculty member, like a professor on campus, that threw out, hey, you guys should be getting $50 million per school per year in this TV deal. When that was taken by Kliavkoff to ESPN, that's what really turned ESPN off and started or accelerated the problems that the Pac-12 had with getting any sort of reasonable TV deal done. We not only got a report from John Canzano with a very long story and a statement from Taylor Randall, the president at Utah, about the situation, although it didn't really address a ton necessarily. It was fairly nothing burger-ish. But then we also got a whole breakdown from John Wilner in response to that of everybody's role in the Pac-12's demise. Like literally every school he went down and classified what their role in the Pac-12's death was. So we can look into that and see if you agree, disagree. I think his point was everybody played a role here, but he also didn't shy away from saying like, hey, that was pretty significant what happened with Utah and Taylor Randall. So I know BYU fans, I see you already sounding off there. That Utah deserves a ton of blame. They certainly do. The part here that stands out the most to me, and I'll elaborate here in just a moment, is not so much that like Utah deserves sole blame for it or that Taylor Randall was the sole reason that this fell apart. There are a million reasons why this fell apart, and that has been very well documented. But Utah was the biggest, loudest, most boisterous champion, literally and figuratively, of the Pac-12 throughout this whole process. And it turns out that they actually played a pretty significant role here in bringing down the league. Whether they deserve all the blame, most of the blame or not, it's probably neither of those. They deserve a chunk of the blame. But Utah seemed to be the one school that didn't really deserve or have much of a hand in it before this. So that is what has really changed with this report from John Canzano. So we'll make our way through all of that today. But you guys know, if you've been here before, you can control some of the content on the show here tonight. Your voice can be heard, ladies and gentlemen. There are almost 100 people in the chat already tonight. It will be too busy for me to keep track of everything going on in there. So if you want to be a part of the proceedings tonight, you want to make the show, you want your chat to be on the show, click the $sign below the chat box. You can attach a donation to your chat. It will make it a super chat and pin it in a separate column for me that will ensure it gets read on the show tonight. So that is your way to control the content that you're getting out of me tonight. Get your opinion heard, get your question asked, and at the same time, you are supporting the work that I'm doing to bring you this content, college football content, conference realignment content, all from a Big 12 angle here on this channel. So I appreciate all of you that are here. You can also just simply like the video if you would like to support the channel as well. That is an easy, free way to do it. Just give me one click that like button. I would appreciate that. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. If you leave a comment in the comment section of the video, that also helps me with the YouTube algorithm. So I would much appreciate it if you did that. And if you are somebody that is not catching this live, you're watching after the fact, you can donate to the channel on Venmo as well. It is John-Kurtz-4 in order to do that. So that's how you can help out. That's the laundry list that I needed to get out to you here before the start of the show today. And now let's get rolling. A couple chats have come in here early on. Oh boy, Snappy AJ, you're gonna make me talk about this right away, huh? Snappy AJ says Oklahoma State expected a tough win last year and a blowout this year. Somehow that was swapped. Glad to avenge a 48-0 tattoo. Sad to play a part in a likely Oklahoma-Texas championship rematch. The Cats aren't done though. Well, Snappy AJ, I don't know. I would actually absolve you from your guilt of saying sad to play a part in a likely OU-UT rematch. I mean, technically, I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that K-State, I don't think this team had it in them no matter what was going to happen in Stillwater, man. There have been some issues there that were put under a freaking magnifying glass and just made to look much worse. Of course, in a primetime spot where a bunch of people are going to be watching on ESPN, the worst possible time for that to happen. K-State played flat, uninspired, and a lot of the issues that we worried about for a lot of the season were just there in spades. Frankly, it was a disgusting performance. That's as bad as K-State has looked since they lost 45-0 to Iowa State in 2020. To me, second worst loss of the Chris Kleiman era to that game, probably. I would put that above Arkansas State. COVID year, I'm going to give you a little bit of latitude for what happened against Arkansas State at the beginning of the year, but to go trying to build on the momentum of the Big 12 championship last year and go play a game in the spotlight on a Friday night in Stillwater and look, nothing against Oklahoma State, Snappy AJ. I thought Mike Gundy and company coached like their season depended on it, and it definitely showed, particularly in the first half. And so nothing against Oklahoma State, but that still is a pretty pedestrian Oklahoma State team. And K-State looked disastrous trying to do much of anything, particularly on offense throughout the night. So I don't know. I wouldn't feel too guilty about that. I think your hope for a non-Texas Oklahoma Big 12 championship game rests in Lawrence, Kansas, it feels like right now. And the unfortunate part about that for everybody that doesn't want to see an Oklahoma-Texas Big 12 championship game rematch is that Kansas does still have Oklahoma on the schedule. They've already obviously taken a loss to Texas. So Kansas did not get one of those like nice cakewalk Oklahoma schedules in Big 12 play. They got a pretty tough one. So it will be more difficult there, but I think Kansas is probably capable at home. It's a game in Lawrence where they will get Oklahoma. We'll see what happens with the quarterback situation. Jalen Daniels still wasn't on the sideline on Saturday, which still feels peculiar to me. But no matter what, they can win games with Jason Bean, as UCF definitely found out on Saturday. So I think that's your hope. And I don't mean to discount West Virginia. That's not supposed to be shade at West Virginia. I think Kansas is a better team. I think they are a more dynamic team than West Virginia. And I think they have a higher ceiling there. So that would be my thought. Now, West Virginia does have an easier schedule. So you have to factor that in as well. But I would put the best shot right now at somebody disturbing the peace as far as that goes being in Lawrence, Kansas. But Snappy AJ, congrats on the win. Happy for Oklahoma State fans because I know it's been rough. It has been a rough couple of years after that Fiesta Bowl win. It's been a lot of consternation in Stillwater. So happy for you guys that you got to enjoy a W there. Jeff, thank you for your donation and your support of the channel. Not seeing any message attached there, but if I am missing it, please let me know. Somebody try to draw my attention to that. But Jeff, I much appreciate it and much appreciate you being here. What's up, Matthew? Matthew, thank you for the support. Matthew says Texas OU was a classic. Jayhawks looking strong. TCU looks very vulnerable. Boy, yes, down in the dumps as I am about K-State right now. TCU does not look good. Things are pretty bad. Chandler Morris, I know, got hurt, but it's not like the TCU offense was doing much anyway, even with him in the game. And that whole Kendall Briles experiment does not seem to be working out very well on offense. BYU has a chance in Fort Worth, which I didn't anticipate before the season. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, BYU looks definitively like the best of the 4 newcomers right now. And that is low key. Maybe low key is the wrong word. But one of my big surprises has been the struggle of UCF so far this year in Big 12 play. Now, I mean, they really should have won that Baylor game. And if they're 1-2 now, you're maybe feeling a little bit different. But I mean, they got handled pretty well in the second half in Manhattan, and they just got demolished from the word go in Lawrence, and then had an epic collapse against Baylor. Things are not going well. Now, to be fair, UCF has been dealing with a starting quarterback that has not been healthy, and I know he only played a couple of snaps, got removed from the game pretty early against Kansas, clearly wasn't very effective. But man, not a great start to Big 12 play for UCF, and we're still at this point. I know UCF was the only newcomer to play this weekend. We're still at this point where the only win for any of the Big 12 newcomers in conference play is BYU beating Cincinnati. So nobody has beaten anybody outside of that group before. So that is a storyline where the beat goes on. The beat goes on. I got to laugh at the next comment to come in. R Webb, my guy, I'm sorry for you. Boy, Baylor and TCU both right now, pretty down in the dumps. R Webb says, hold my beer, John, on a bad season. R Webb, of course, of the Baylor persuasion. Yeah, I mean, hey, Blake Shapen looked good, but that's I guess about all you can say after that game where Texas Tech really took it to Baylor. Now, I will say congratulations to Texas Tech fans, and this is something I was saying a couple of weeks ago. I didn't think Texas Tech was down and out. I didn't think Tech was going to be done. I thought there was too much there on that roster, especially like the way Taj Brooks has been playing. I thought there was too much there on that roster for them to just pack it up and head in with like a sub 500 season or something. I thought they still had more fight left in them than that. And that seems to be very true, particularly the last 6 quarters of football that they've played. The second half against Houston, and then the entire game, start to finish, they get out to a hot start against Baylor, never really look back after that. They continue to just pound Taj Brooks at people. I believe he went over 170 right in the game. 4 straight 100-yard game for Taj Brooks. Defensive line was really getting after Baylor averaged less than a yard per carry in this game. I mean, boy, not good in Waco right now. So yeah, the Baylor TCU matchup, which I was thinking about this today. I was like, God, I mean, that game for so long meant a ton. And you think about some of the last year's thrilling finish. You think about going back to like the 2013-14 era of Big 12 football and what that game meant. Not going to be quite the same this year. So this is kind of the league, man. I mean, I think what we're learning is just that there are going to be a ton of ups and downs for teams throughout this league. I think you'll continue to see this carry the day in the new conference, unless maybe Utah is ready to come in and run it. But even Utah has been dealing with a quarterback injury, but a little bit more suspect this year too. So I think you'll see coaches rise and fall, and it's like Dave Aranda, Chris Kleiman, Mike Gundy. We're seeing it from all these coaches right now in this league because everybody is, and Sonny Dykes, don't know how I left him out of that discussion too. All 4 of those coaches that have done great things, been to Big 12 championship games, won Big 12 championships, even won a college football playoff game, and now are back here really struggling in this league. And don't look now, but hey, Matt Campbell, man. I mean, everybody writing Matt Campbell off. I know I saw George Niang getting after it on Twitter, tweeting about Matt Campbell. Wins as a touchdown underdog at home against TCU, and now has built Iowa State back to 3-3 this year. Do not totally bury the clones and Matt Campbell, apparently. So it's just been wild, man. It's been wild, everything that's happening in the league so far this year. But I do believe, and I guess we're going to table this Utah discussion for a little bit because I'm just looking at the comments that are coming in from you guys. You're pushing this in the direction of talking about Week 6 in Big 12 football. Totally fine with me. So we'll ride this wave for now. But I think what you're seeing is like we have some separation. Clearly, Oklahoma and Texas are very good. And I hate to say it, but one of my biggest takeaways from the week is that, I mean, Oklahoma and Texas both very much look SEC ready. Last year, got in all the shots, and they deserved them. They were not very good. Clearly a ramping up period for Oklahoma and Brent Venables to get going. Texas continued to stub their toe. Now, to be determined on Texas, there's a lot of pressure on them now to not stub their toe the rest of the way, now that they do already have this loss to Oklahoma. The pressure will be ratcheted up on Texas, and that will be very interesting to monitor. You guys know that I've been pretty steadfast in that and not being completely sold on Texas being capable of not stubbing their toe the rest of the way against the rest of the league. But for now, I thought both of those teams looked very good. They look SEC ready. Oklahoma definitely has a better defense this year. I know it was kind of a wild game at times, but they've got the better defense. Dylan Gabriel is playing like a top-tier college quarterback and making plays in the clutch. Both teams made a lot of plays in the clutch there. So would have loved for that whole thing to end last year and send them into the SEC off of the way that the season ended last year. But unfortunately, it's shaping up to be a much, much different story this year. And the other thing that I think has emerged is that Kansas is the third best team in the league. I'm not sure that there's any sort of good argument for anybody else outside of that. And West, again, I am not trying to slander West Virginia, and they will probably stay in the conversation because of their schedule. And look, frankly, I kind of hope that they do. Like, I like the West Virginia story. I like Neil Brown. But I just think Kansas is a far superior football team if you're talking about who the actual better team is. But so if you're going on, like, people will talk about a power ranking being just like how good you think the teams are, not what the schedule is, not other factors. If it's just a straight up power ranking, I think Kansas would be all alone in third, and I don't know that it's really that close. And then I guess after that, you're looking at like West Virginia, BYU, probably in that next group, and then maybe Texas Tech, like West Virginia, BYU, Texas Tech, kind of in that next group, and then everybody else. It's just it's a little bit of a hodgepodge after that. So anyway, let's continue moving on here. Addicted to capping. I would have to say that I do think you are addicted to capping, because much as I am loving up your Jayhawks here today, I do not think that they finish 11-1. I think that's a pretty tough putt. It was a great game, total complete game for sure for Kansas. Ran all over UCF, ran for 399 yards. They should have given someone else a carry there at the end of the game. Make sure you hit that 200-yard mark. But I mean, crazy, averaged over 7 yards a pop. I mean, as good as Devin Neal is, like, Highshaw's awesome too. That guy finishes runs better than I think anybody in the league. Yeah, maybe Taj Brooks is a really good back too. We have some good ones in this league, but Highshaw just feels like he's always dragging someone for an extra like 3 yards at the end of a run. Kotelnicki, I've talked about it a long time. I think he's elite as an offensive coordinator. So there are a lot of things that are really rolling there in Lawrence. And frankly, I don't know. If I were a Kansas fan, I'd kind of just be like, look, man, just roll with Jason Bean. Like, I get it. Jalen Daniels has a higher ceiling, but this is some weird stuff with the back and not even being on the sideline and 2 years in a row of in, out, in. You can win with Jason Bean, man. He's capable enough, especially when you have a running game like that. And the defense is at least playing a little bit better. I thought UCF would just run all over that defense, and would have helped probably if Rice Plumlee were actually healthy. But still, Kansas looked very impressive. I do not see them running the table to finish 11-1. I would think there is another loss or maybe two coming there. But yeah, I would say that I've raised my expectation from, I was thinking that they were 7-5, 8-4, and Kansas now looks 9-3-ish to me here at this point, and can probably threaten to make the Big 12 championship game. So no hate for me on what Kansas is right now this year. David, what's up, David? David, not David / David. Good to hear from you. Appreciate you, my friend. Says the Jack Trice legacy game was a great spotlight on a story that should have a larger reach. Amped to see the Clones play one of the new schools on Saturday. I agree with you. That was really well done. Iowa State executed that well. I thought the uniforms were cool. Obviously paying homage to Jack Trice, who, it was like this week, right, was the 100-year anniversary of him passing away after a game that I think was against Minnesota. But black player who suffered injuries during a game from just getting hit so hard. And I hope, if I have any parts of this story wrong, let me know. But this is my understanding of the story. And then passed away. But even some of the touches down to like what was it? They took a part of the letter that he wrote that they found a couple days before the game and stuck it on the back of the jerseys. Obviously, they did the midfield logo too, with the old logo or pattern that was on the jerseys when he was playing. Very well executed all the way around from everybody in Ames, and definitely raises awareness to a great story. So I couldn't agree more, man. It was a really nice night in Ames all the way around, how they played on the field, and and how they honored Jack Trice with everything going on there. So shout out to the Clones, man. Shout out to the Clones. BR James. What's up, BR James? BR James, I'm a little upset over the last game. That was a bad loss. Well, so here's the thing, BR James. I don't know who you're a fan of. I feel like that could be talking about a lot of people. Do we have any insight here? I'm going to scroll through the actual chat now here. Who was BR James? Who is BR James talking about, everybody? Who is BR James talking about? I mean, if you're a K-State fan, I definitely understand that. That was a bad loss. And again, nothing against Oklahoma State, but it's not so much just losing at Oklahoma State. It's the way that it looked and just how much, I mean, it just looked like guys didn't care. I know they're not playing hard. The special teams unit is a freaking disaster. Well, Sean Snyder is in Lawrence and Kansas is running back punt returns for touchdowns on Saturday. I mean, it's not good. It's not good. It is not good. I think some soul searching needs to be done in Manhattan. But BR, if you were talking about somebody else, my apologies. Somebody try to let me know if so. But I appreciate your support of the channel, my friend, very, very much. Thank you. Grove Nasty, what's up, Grove Nasty? Grove Nasty wants to talk about the Cats. I appreciate your support, Grove Nasty. Thank you for being here. Most of us Cat fans might have had our expectations skyrocketed after being spoiled by the football and basketball success last year. Good game, Oklahoma State. Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Look, I think the team probably had their expectations inflated a little bit. To me, I haven't talked to anybody specifically about this, like within the walls of the locker room or anything, but it seems pretty obvious that these guys got a lot of love. They got a lot of praise in the offseason and probably thought that it would come easier than it has so far this year. And I sense some of that with what is going on. And it just comes down to, again, me, like guys just not looking fired. They just look dead and slow, lethargic, sluggish that entire game. It was not good. It was not good. You could single out a bunch, you've got your 5th-year center snapping the ball when the quarterback's running up to make a check on a 4th down play in the red zone. So the ball goes backwards for 30 yards. Like, oh, what the hell, man? Yeah. For sure, expectations were too high. And the thing that sucks about it and just drives me nuts, I already mentioned the primetime thing, that like this is a game a lot of people are watching. The last time you played a game that a lot of people were watching, it was the Alabama game, where after a nice start, you wound up getting housed. It's hard to build up a brand like that. You've played better when people haven't been watching as much. Big 12 championship game was nice last year, and that did have a ton of viewers, so that helps. But you gotta capitalize on these opportunities, or at least not just lay a giant egg. And that's what it was. So yeah, there's definitely some of that. Hopefully the same thing isn't coming for basketball. I will say I am much more confident in Jerome Tang and where the basketball program is at and their ability to replicate a really successful season, which nothing against Chris Kleiman, but like I think Jerome Tang is about as elite as it gets when it comes to college basketball coaches. But yeah, football, it's been a harsh dose of reality, man. There's no doubt about it. It has been a really harsh dose of reality. Eric, what's up, Eric? Appreciate you weighing in, and thank you for your support of the channel. Eric says, looks like Oklahoma State's bowl streak will survive another year. I was surprised at how well we looked and how flat K-State looked. Go Pokes. Yeah, I had Oklahoma State's schedule pulled up earlier because I was looking at that. I was like, all right, so probably going to be a bowl team, right? So Oklahoma State still has Cincy, Houston, UCF, West Virginia, BYU all on the schedule. And I think the other game is Oklahoma, which obviously will be tough. And then I'm missing one outside of that. So, I mean, if we're talking about that, like you need 3 more wins. I mean, Houston, very winnable. Cincy, very winnable. UCF, very winnable. West Virginia, probably winnable. BYU, maybe winnable. And I'm looking at this without the actual home and road splits pulled up. So let's do that, to be fair to Oklahoma State here. I know that. Oh, and they've got Kansas this week. That obviously is going to be tough. Yeah, that's the other one. It is in Stillwater, so that will definitely give them a chance. But if Kansas plays like they did on Saturday, that's going to be a tough putt. At West Virginia after that, that's difficult. So it may be that Oklahoma State drops a couple here, but then you can sort of get 3 of the next 4 are tough. It's that end of the season stretch of UCF, Houston, BYU where you feel like they could maybe do some damage. I don't know. it's just so hard to predict the Big 12. It's so hard to know how much of that was Oklahoma State pulling it all together for 1 week against a flat K-State team, or has Oklahoma State really turned a corner? I will say, I think one of the biggest things here that has helped Oklahoma State out and made them a significantly better team, pulled them up from, like the just dreadful South Alabama performance, is just picking a damn quarterback and sticking with him. And I think Alan Bowman was the best option of the three. And he got hot. Like, he was making some nice throws for a good portion of that game. I don't know that he has like an incredibly high ceiling, but he can definitely be a competent quarterback for you. And I think just picking him, sticking with it, letting everybody know like that's the plan, and then just trying to build around that is definitely the way to go. And I think that has helped Oklahoma State. So yeah, the way that they played probably can get them to a bowl with how mediocre, frankly, this league is right now. So I agree with you on that, Eric. Eddie Lozano, what's up, Eddie? You guys know the drill. If you need a real estate agent in San Antonio, give my man Eddie a call. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate, in the house. Thank you for your support, as always. Eddie says, great weekend. I welcome the new teams to the Big 12 chaos. They are all eating humble pie for now. UCF and BYU are going to be forces to be reckoned with. I still, man, like I said, I've been pretty stunned by UCF here. I thought they'd be able to come in and compete right away, and I'm still very bullish on where they're going. But like, BYU has been pretty rock solid so far. We'll see how well that holds up. But for right now, I do feel like they have been pretty rock solid, and they definitely have the infrastructure, I think, to be fairly successful here over the first couple of years in their conference. I'm going to pull up the schedule for this week. So BYU, going to Fort Worth. Golly, I'm seeing the early line on that. TCU -5. Are we really doing that to BYU? We're going to go TCU -5 after what they have been putting out there the last couple of weeks. I get it. Not easy to play in Ames. But last we saw TCU at home, they didn't look very good either. So I don't know. Early indication to me there would be like, maybe you go put down some cash on the Cougars in that game. But yes, Eddie, it's definitely chaotic. This league is absolutely chaotic. Even at the top with Texas and Oklahoma, they played a chaotic game. That was as Red River as it gets, man. That was like, they went full on Red River for that game with like block punts, fake punts, missed field goals, all sorts of stuff. Exchanging haymakers in the last 5 minutes of the game, exchanging haymakers in the first 5 minutes of the game. That was a pretty awesome display that those guys put on. I mean, much as we can be frustrated with them, be angry with them, hate on them, you got to tip the cap to both of those teams for putting on quite the show at the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. Michael, what's up, Michael? Michael says the running joke for UCF fans on chat threads is which player from the current week's opponent is going to start their Heisman campaign that day. Yeah, well, it was DJ Giddens a couple weeks ago in Manhattan. Who would it have been for Baylor? Are we talking? Is it like Shapen for Baylor? Did they have a running back go nuts? I'm trying to remember that game. And then obviously like Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, I think they both hit 130 in the game on Saturday. So certainly helped out both of those guys there too. But yeah, the UCF defense appears to have a long way to go, and the offense is still inconsistent enough. And like McClain, he can make some things happen, but that guy also just feels like a walking turnover at times. I'm always scared of what he is going to do. So I can only imagine as a UCF fan, the feeling there. But yeah, it's been a tough go, man. It's been a tough go for UCF so far. I still think you've got a good coach. And I know I saw a lot of people making fun of the Malzahn extension on Twitter coming right in the midst of all this really rough start. But look, if you just don't blow the Baylor game, you could justify it as like, look, Kansas, third best team in the league. You're on the road, motivated Kansas team coming off a loss. Like, you can kind of justify that. It's the Baylor game that stings big time for you right now. Alan, what's going on, Alan? I appreciate you being here, Alan. Alan says, John, good result with Jason Bean, but not sure KU beats Oklahoma without Jalen Daniels. Chris Kleiman, too good of a coach for K-State not to bounce back this season. Wheel invite still open. Rock Chalk Jayhawk Allen. Well, you're too kind, Alan. I appreciate it because I know the noise is getting loud in Lawrence toward those of us in Manhattan here. And I mean, I, for one, am not at all looking forward to that game in November. Not one single freaking bit. So the more K-State continues to play like this, Alan, and the more Kansas continues to play like this, the less likely it is that I take you up on that wheel invite. Nothing personal at all, of course, but that is not a place that I feel like I'm going to want to be right now. The Jalen Daniels discussion is very interesting. I think Kansas could still beat them with Jason Bean. I mean, yes, Bean's ceiling is not as high as Daniels, but at a certain point, you have to just kind of take it for what it is. Like, Jalen Daniels is a guy that never stays healthy. And he also is, and I have been beating this drum for over a year now, and it's really much more about Kotelnicki and a little bit about Bean than it is about Daniels. But like, if you take out the 4-game stretch at the beginning of the year last year when Daniels was just ripping up really bad defenses, I mean, like, Jason Bean statistically has been better, and Daniels is always hurt. And even if he's playing well, a little bit hurt, and you're going to excuse some of the play last year down the stretch for that, that's who he is. Like, he's always nursing these injuries. So I feel like the Jalen Daniels ceiling exists in September of 2022, and everybody wants to think that that can still come back. And I'm just not sure that that is. I'm not sure that that is. Maybe he will come back and be a force, and I will be totally wrong. But if I were a Kansas fan, I would be kind of done counting on that. And I would equate it to like how, as a K-State fan, I feel about Keegan Johnson, who was supposed to be a stud receiver transfer from Iowa. Texas A&M wanted him. Notre Dame wanted him. And we keep hearing about a soft tissue injury that's held him back, and he doesn't do much. And I mean, I'm just done trying to count on that. It just feels like it is who he is. He was injured at Iowa. He's injured here, and it's not happening. So I don't know. I would still have optimism if I were you that you could get it done in front of a frenzied crowd in Lawrence with Jason Bean playing quarterback. I wouldn't write that off. That'll be a difficult spot for the Sooners for sure. And I hope, I mean, I tend to, like, on the Kleiman point, Kleiman has had a total WTF loss basically every year that he's been here. 2019, it was to West Virginia at the end of the year when K-State looked like they were going to rip off a 9-win regular season. In 2020, you've got, I mean, a bunch of them, but Arkansas State in particular early on. And then they went on the road and beat Oklahoma right after that. 21, what was 21? Maybe 21, there was, what did they do anyway? 22, obviously last year, Tulane, they lose that game and then bounce back and win the Big 12. So they have, in fairness, as down as I am, yes, they have shown a penchant to be able to do that. We'll see. I just, from what I've heard, I think there's a lot of soul searching going on in Manhattan within the Meniere football complex. And I mean, damn it, there should be. That was pretty pathetic on Friday. Snake, what's up, Snake? Appreciate you being here and appreciate your support. Snake says, not upset about the losses, but super disappointed in Gus not being able to field a semi-competent team. All 3 phases look awful. Embarrassed night. Yeah, I after watching that game, I can understand how that's your feeling. Coming right on the heels of blowing the Baylor game, I can understand that you're feeling, and coming on the heels of just being outlasted really in the second half in Manhattan, like, I can definitely understand that feeling. I am pretty shocked by it myself, as I've reiterated here on the show. I would say, take into account, again, you have been dealing with a backup quarterback, and I know that McClain can maybe push the ball down the field more than John Rice Plumlee can, but he is so mistake prone that I really think he's a downgrade from Rice Plumlee. So the offense, had he been able to stay healthy, probably would have developed more continuity and look a hell of a lot better than they do right now. But yeah, I feel like you're saying in some ways the same thing I was saying about K-State's loss this week, where you're disappointed, and it's not just a loss, but it's how it looked, like how it happened, how these losses have happened, how they have looked is not giving you a whole heck of a lot of hope and optimism for where this thing is going. I think the reality is, I know UCF fans are brash and they've had a lot of success, and they had reason to think, in my opinion, that they would come in and have some success. But the reality is there's a learning curve, so to speak, and it's not easy to just jump into a new league and be playing teams like this week in and week out instead of getting a breather with like a Tulsa, Temple, whatever in the AAC. It's different. And puts a lot more pressure on you. And I think there will just be a ramping up period for all the newcomers, but especially as it regards this conversation, UCF. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Cat fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. Appreciate you being here. Daniel says, I was bummed out by the Cats' performance on Friday. At least I didn't have to watch it. The Huskers were on at work. Oh, yeah, that's right. Nebraska was playing at the same time. Hopefully they will bounce back next week. At least the Chiefs won. Go Cats. Yeah, Chiefs played fairly well today. Nice consolation prize. Travis Kelce gave me a little bit of a scare. But, Daniel, I actually didn't really watch much of the game live myself either. Friday night games are killing me. I had bought concert tickets like months in advance, not even thinking about the football schedule. And then I got here and I was like, well, I really want to go to this concert, so I'm going to go. And I saw about the first quarter, I saw the Will Howard 70-yard near touchdown and then the TD to Sinnott, and left after that, and then was kind of periodically checking my phone. But I knew it wasn't good because the texts I was getting. I would look and just see texts coming in from friends, and it was not looking good. So I was like, well, let me be blissfully ignorant while I enjoy this concert. And then I fully expected to see that it was an L when I came out, and sure as hell it was. So I guess that it saved me for a little while, but I did have to go back and watch it and subject my eyes to that. So yeah, it was rough. It was rough. But there'll be better days, Daniel. There'll be better days. And you are correct. At least the Chiefs won. But I always appreciate your support, Daniel. Thank you for being here. Much, much, much appreciate it as always. Les, what's going on, Les? Les wants to talk about the Clones. Hey, Clones deserve it. That was a nice performance at home. ISU dominated, block punt, 4 picks, turnover on downs, and 200-plus yards rushing by ISU. If ISU keeps it up, could be a dark horse outside of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, West Virginia. Look, I don't want to rain on everybody's parade here. I feel like I'm raining on parades here, but I would just caution you guys all. It's easy to do this because anybody can start looking at the schedule and be like, hey, man, this league is mediocre enough that I could see that being a win. I could see that being a win. I could see that being a win, and building up to it. I'd just be careful. I'd just be careful with that because everybody also is flawed enough that they're tripping up, and there's so much parity in this league that I don't think you can in good conscience say we've seen enough from Iowa State this year to feel like they could start ripping off wins to be a dark horse Big 12 conference championship game contender here. I think that is, how about this? Pun intended for the Iowa State fans. I think that is a couple bridges too far, not just one bridge. I would classify that as 2 bridges too far, but it looks like Iowa State can probably be a bowl team this year, which I would not have said a week, certainly 2-3 weeks ago. So I think that's probably where your sights need to be set, but I won't take anything away from the performance on Saturday. That was a very nice performance. And don't take any of this to be me saying from looking down on you as a K-State fan or anything. Sure as hell Iowa State could beat K-State if they play the way that they did on Friday. No doubt about that at all. Nick, what's up, Nick? Appreciate you, Nick. God, everybody wants to talk about K-State, Oklahoma State, huh? I appreciate you, Nick. Thank you for being here, man. Nick says, I was surprised as everyone else inside Boone Pickens Stadium Friday night. Much needed win for the Cowboys for certain. Once again, K-State fans were all class. Consoled one fan by letting them know I was in Manhattan last season. Go Pokes. Yeah, you definitely have earned the right to enjoy that game on Saturday if you were in Manhattan last year, Nick, because that was, again, about as unexpected and just totally brutal. I mean, I can only imagine. That's a really, really rough one to have traveled to attend. I can remember going into that game feeling like K-State was so beat up and Daniel Green was out. And I was like, I don't know how they're going to do this against the top 10 Oklahoma State team. And then, 48-0. So, yeah, hey, and I even, Mike Gundy got caught on the IG live after the game saying that, we own those mother bleepers. And I was like, you know what? I mean, in Manhattan, that's not the case, but you certainly do in Stillwater. And with all the doubters, I don't even feel like that was directed at K-State as much as it was just to the doubters. It felt to me like Gundy just had a lot of FU energy to him in that game. And you saw it with the fake punt. I mean, K-State has to have the worst special teams in the country, falling for that fake punt. But a fake punt, some trick plays, misdirection, reverses stuff early on, which K-State has not been good against the entire Kleiman era. Just felt like he really put it together, and they used the bye week to coach their jobs depended on it, and it showed. I think that definitely showed. So anyway, yeah, I know that there's a lot of love between these two fan bases. No real hatred there. I don't hate Oklahoma State at all. Oklahoma State is one of my favorites in the Big 12 root for outside of the Cats, so I can understand the sentiment there as far as the fans go. But Nick, I appreciate your support of the channel, man. I appreciate your thoughts on the game, and congrats to the Cowboys. Congrats to the Cowboys on the dub. R-Web, what's up, R-Web? R-Web checking in again. Any thoughts on future Big Ten schedule where, based upon some teams not having rivals and some have several, and built a schedule accordingly? Check the Athletic article. All right, I'm going to have to check the article. I admit, R-Web, I tell you this all the time. You keep up on this stuff better than I do. I mean, I saw that the Big Ten schedule came out. I did not actually read much about it or look into it. Here are the highlights of the schedule. Michigan. Well, the thing that I kept seeing was Michigan's schedule next year, which is crazy. Michigan will play 3 of the former Pac-12 schools in 2024. They got a road trip to Washington, home games against Oregon and USC. Ohio State goes to Eugene. USC will play either Michigan or Ohio State each of its first 5 years in the league. That makes sense. TV, I'm sure, is salivating over that. 12 protected annual matchups: Illinois, Northwestern, Illinois, Purdue. God, Illinois gets 2 protected games. Indiana, Purdue, Iowa, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin. So, yeah, there you go. So, like, Iowa has 3 protected rivalries: Minnesota, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. Maryland, Rutgers is protected. Michigan, Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State. That makes a ton of sense. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Oregon, Washington, and UCLA, USC. No divisions. So, sorry, Big Ten Westers. No divisions. And the Big Ten championship game will include the top 2 teams in the overall standings. 262 versions of the schedule before the office found the one that matched its preferences. Yeah, I'd have to take some time to like really digest that and go through what those matchups are that are protected there and who has them and who doesn't. But my initial reaction to that is it seems like TV is definitely getting what they want with the way that they have set that up early on here. But I'll try to get back to you on that, R-Web. I appreciate you always keeping me on my toes and being up to date on everything. It just my initial take just from looking at it real quick is like, man, that just screams like TV. They are going to love that. They're going to absolutely love that. Let me see if I can pull up Michigan football 2024 schedule, because that thing was ridiculous. Michigan's got Fresno State to open the year, which now they tough loss to Wyoming. Tech fans know that is not an easy place to go play. But Fresno State, then Texas, right, in a non-con matchup. Then once you get into conference play, they're going to play Michigan State, Oregon, USC, Ohio State, Washington. The last 2 of those, Ohio State and Washington, being on the road. Their final 4 game. Well, okay, these are date TBA. Okay. So Oregon, USC, Ohio State, Washington in the conference section. I maybe I shouldn't have included Michigan State in that, but Texas, Fresno, Oregon, USC, Ohio State, Washington. Far cry from Michigan's schedule this year, which kind of makes me want to cry because it has been comically easy so far. And they had a classic like late 90s Bill Snyder non-conference schedule this year. So anyway. Appreciate you, R-Web. Thank you, man. Hiking Cat. What's up, Hiking Cat? Hiking Cat says, using my monthly subscription to give you a chance to talk about Utah. Thank you, Hiking Cat. We have definitely been steered in. And look, I love it when we get steered in the like talking about what's going on the field direction for sure. But I know that some will want to hear for sure more about the Utah aspect of this story. There is a separate video if you want just the nuts and bolts, the facts of what is in the report from John Canzano. Separate video that I put out earlier this morning, so you can go check that out. But here's what we have. So ESPN walked away from the negotiating table after the Pac-12 extended a counteroffer of $50 million per school last fall. The offer was presented to the network by George Kliavkov and Sports Media Advisors, the consulting firm operated by Doug Perlman. The $50 million counteroffer, some sources say, was shaped heavily by input from one particular university president, a Pac-12 board member who others say consulted with a campus professor to come up with the valuation. He confirmed the identity of that president, and it was Taylor Randall from the University of Utah. And here is the statement that Taylor Randall gave. He says, the Pac-12 presidents and chancellors worked collectively in pursuit of a new media rights deal. Though an offer was made by one of our media rights partners, we elected to take the rights to the market to get the best deal. Throughout the process, many of the CEOs, including myself, pushed to ensure the conference was aggressive to secure the very best agreement we could. Several conference schools retain their own consultants to value the league, which resulted in a range of estimations. It is my understanding that any mention of $50 million, which was higher than any valuation, was only as a potential starting point in negotiations to help us get to the estimated true value. All right, so all that to say, he's saying, like, look, I was not alone here, and that was supposed to just be a starting point. Says Randall provides the framework for the next part of the discussion. The presidents and chancellors wanted to take the rights to market. There were a number of pivotal moments that led them down the dismal path to destruction. But Taylor's account doesn't position himself as a lone voice in the room pushing for $50 million, but rather as one of many of the CEOs who are trying to negotiate the best deal. One Pac-12 president told me Kliavkoff and sports media advisors completely misplayed the $50 million counteroffer. Quote, the instructions were to negotiate. This wasn't supposed to be a take your ball and go home scenario. So what the Canzano story kind of gets at the rest of the way is like, hey, as much as you could blame Taylor Randall for this, and there should be some blame there, that was clearly an unrealistic number, but George Kliavkoff is ultimately the guy that is going to be the ones talking with the TV networks, and he's got to have a better sense and feel for what it's going to do to throw that number out there. So whether it was being more careful in how it was presented to ESPN, or whether it was managing better the expectations of everybody in the room and talking Taylor Randall down a little bit and being like, hey, man, I don't think that's going to go too well for us. We should probably chill out on that. Either way, it is ultimately the buck stops with him, and that's a misplay in leadership as far as he is concerned. So I do agree with that. That Kliavkoff should share a lot of blame for this. Again, I will reiterate, to me, the interesting part of this is that, like, Utah was the loudest voice in the room. Certainly their fans were the loudest voice in the room about the Pac-12 being fine and how great of a conference it is. And like, we're the biggest cheerleaders for the league. And it looked like, you know, you could obviously place a ton of blame on USC, UCLA. You could place a lot of blame on Colorado. You could place a lot of blame on Oregon and Washington. Even if you want to go to Stanford, Cal for just being total albatrosses on the field now. There are a million ways that you could split blame in the league, but none of it seemingly went to Utah at all. And now it's like, oh, look, Utah, actually, you played your part as well by planting this $50 million number out there that became a huge part of the problem. So that, to me, was just a really interesting part about the report. It was like, hey, Utah's hands are not clean in this. I would certainly not pin all of the blame on them at all. And to be fair, the rest of the article does go on to say, so here's a little bit more about how Kliavkoff handled things. Multiple presidents and chancellors told me that Kliavkoff closed the negotiation circle so tightly that it was difficult to get accurate information. The deal team was comprised of the commissioner, his consultant, and few others. Pac-12 presidents relied heavily on Kliavkoff's chronically upbeat updates, which explains why so many campus leaders parroted the same "everything is great, we're all united" rhetoric. Well, it was clearly not behind closed doors. And it says, in fact, a member of Kliavkoff's executive team told me that at one point, Taylor Randall inquired if he could participate in the actual media rights negotiations. He's got a business background and felt like he would be well suited for that and could be a representative for the university presidents in there. And I actually think that seems like a decent idea, but that was shot down. The request was shot down by Kliavkoff and the consulting firm. And the consulting firm, by the way, was described as a boutique consulting firm that was a buddy. It was run by a buddy of George Kliavkoff's, an old buddy of his. So that also seems to be a really major misstep here, that you didn't have a different voice in the room that could have helped steer things. So Kliavkoff, shoulders a ton of the blame here, much more so than Taylor Randall. But Randall did play a part. And I also will say, I have to laugh at this, the Pac-12 presidents relied heavily on Kliavkoff's chronically upbeat updates, which explains why so many campus leaders parroted the same "everything is great, we're all united" rhetoric. Well, it clearly was not behind closed doors. I seem to remember somebody else that really bought hook, line, and sinker the "everything is great, we're all united, and everything is fine" line, and then shoved it down everybody's throats and used it to be condescending on Twitter about, and that man was John Canzano. So I would just like to point that out as well. As he points that out about the presidents, he was right there with them, throwing that out there very loudly, very boisterously at everybody. So, it's just ironic. You're always going to get that from a Canzano piece here about realignment. There will always be some sense of irony about something he is saying about how things went down. Not saying he's not connected here in the Pac-12. It is very good reporting to get that Taylor Randall nugget. but he was clearly as propaganda-ish as anybody in this and was falling for everything that was being told to him. And there's not really a whole lot of admission of that. The article, again, I would reference you to the video that was posted earlier today, but they continue to go into this UCLA thing. They wanted UCLA back, and they really thought, hey, if we can get to $50 million to pay UCLA, the Board of Regents will bring them back. And that's what Kliavkov was trying to work on. But that would have required unequal revenue sharing, something that Oregon and Washington would have never gone for. And Fox could have just said, well, fine, we'll swap out Oregon for UCLA if you're going to bring them back, and we'll still have our West Coast contingent out there from the league. It just, none of that seems like such a ridiculous thing to be chasing, which again comes back on Kliavkov. So I would not give Taylor Randall more of the blame than George Kliavkov for sure, if we are doing like a little pie chart breakdown here of who is to blame. Let me read you what John Wilner said about Utah as far as when he went and literally went school by school in the Pac-12. And here's what they deserve blame for. His blurb on Utah says the exact timing remains unknown, but at some point during the late summer or early fall of 2022, the Pac-12 received an offer from ESPN that would have distributed $30 million to each school per year. The presidents not only declined, a small group of them pushed Kliavkov to negotiate hard to make $50 million per school a counteroffer. The man behind the exorbitant asking price was Utah's Taylor Randall, according to a report this week by John Canzano. At least one president supported the position, and many others were indifferent. But Randall was the prime driver. Kliavkov went back to ESPN with the $50 million ask. The network walked away, and the Pac-12 headed to market just as the economy turned stormy. So he is saying, like, hey, there was at least one other, but he's not saying, like, there were a bunch of others. He's at least one other. Many were indifferent. Randall was the prime driver. So he's putting a little bit of blame there on Utah. Even John Wilner is putting a little bit of blame there on Utah, really, as he should. So Utah, your hands are not clean in all of this, even if you are not the main culprit. That would be my conclusion from what we found out there. And to all of you who I'm sure there's a crowd that's furious that it took me until 40 minutes in the video to get into to that a little bit more in depth. But hey, I go where the chat takes me. I go where the super chats take me. And we've been talking a lot of Big 12 football here today. Let me throw out a reminder. We have 230 plus people in here right now. Please do click the like button if you can. Totally free, easy way to support the channel. If you want to get something in here in the next 10 to 15 minutes, make sure you click that $sign below the chat box to make a donation, creates a super chat, and we'll ensure that your question or comment gets read on the show here tonight. Great way to support the channel. You can do so on Venmo as well. It is John-Kurtz-4 to do so there. If you're not catching this live, another very easy way to support the channel. And hey, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe on this channel. We're talking conference realignment, college football, college hoops, all from a Big 12 angle. And we're live on Wednesdays and Sundays. And as you can see here, it's a lively group, man. It's a fun group, fun place to come talk about what is going on in the college football world. So with that having said, let's move on. Jim Skinner. What's up, Jim? Jim, thank you for your support. Much appreciated, my friend. Jim says, if that conference dissolves, which 4 ACC teams do you think are most likely to join the Big 12? Louisville, Pitt. What have I been doing? Louisville, Pitt, and then you're talking about, like, I feel like I'm missing somebody. It's like you get put on the spot. You want to make sure that you have the standings pulled up. There's just a list of teams pulled up here. ACC, Louisville and Pitt to me are by far the 2 most likely, which shout out to Louisville, by the way, for that win on Saturday over Notre Dame. I think maybe Duke would be a possibility. I don't know. Georgia Tech seems to get included in a lot of those. NC State, maybe, like Virginia Tech, maybe. That's probably who you're picking from. I would say Pitt, Virginia Tech, NC State, Louisville, Duke. Some group of those teams would be your most likely. I know that's not like a tight 4 for you. I don't really have like a tight 4, so I'll give you a little looser 4, which means that it's not 4. So I got it. Look, I'm a communications major. I got a communications degree, not a math degree. I took 1 math class in college. That was it. So I'm not great at the math there, Jim. But I hope that answers your question. It has, there was all the smoke coming out about Clemson like 2 weeks ago, and now we're not hearing as much about that now. And supposedly that's going to happen in October. I know it's Still very early in October here, but keep your eye on it. It's a good reminder from Jim. Keep your eye on it. Again, the couple of Clemson writers, one from where was that? It was in South Carolina. Why am I not? Charleston, South Carolina paper had reported that a Clemson official was basically hinting at that coming this season. And then you had one of the Clemson fan sites, one of their guys that runs the site talking about, hey, we've been saying that this is going to happen actually in October. So keep your eyes peeled on the ACC, and I'm sure the Big 12 will have their ear to the ground on that. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? Matthew checking in again. Thank you, Matthew. Matthew says, gotta run. We'll listen to the rest later. Very curious to hear your thoughts on your teaser line about the Pac-12 downfall. Lots of postmortem theories. Yeah, hopefully, I'm guessing that was submitted before we got Hiking Cat in there to get me into all of it. So I hope that answered most of what you wanted to hear there, Matthew, with what I had to say on that. Let me see if there was another interesting one that Wilner put out. I think probably the two interesting things to glean from the article Wilner put out, and like, here's what you should blame each school for. He did put some blame on Cal and Stanford. He said the Bay Area schools aren't as innocent as they appear because the collective downturn of the two programs in the nation's sixth largest media market was a very real problem for the conference once USC and UCLA agreed to join the Big Ten. Had either school been relevant nationally, the Pac-12's overall media valuation would have been higher and its 10-school negotiating position stronger. Instead, the twin departures in Los Angeles and the complete irrelevance in the Bay Area effectively turned the nation's most populous state into a black hole for the conference. And that is true. That is true. If Stanford were still like the David Shaw, Andrew Luck, 2012-ish Stanford, that would have changed things a lot. Because then big, powerful media market, big, powerful brand as a school with all the Olympic sports that people loves, and a football program that's kicking ass year in and year out. That would have definitely helped. Now, some of this too, in fairness, and look at me defending the elites, the academic elites of Stanford and Cal. But like transfer portal, NIL, that stuff has not helped because that is not very conducive to what Cal and Stanford are trying to do. So that has played a part in it, but also they're going to have to shoulder some of the blame for that. The other thing I thought was interesting was this, and I think maybe we had kind of heard this, but seeing it laid out here by John Wilner was interesting. He talks about Washington. He says, darkness arrived at dawn on August 4th. 7 of the 9 remaining schools had woken up believing everyone was committed to signing the grant of rights agreement that was essential to survival. But Washington was deeply unhappy with the proposed media deal, which guaranteed just $25 million annually from Apple and did not guarantee exposure on linear TV. Although Oregon had been portrayed as the linchpin to Pac-12 survival, Washington was in reality the prime mover in the Pacific Northwest during those cruel overnight hours, according to sources. Quote, those schools were a yes on Thursday night, a source said, but once Washington flipped, Oregon had to leave, and that was it. So pinning more of the blame on Washington than Oregon as being like the real driving force between them taking that Big Ten offer in the final hour, I thought was interesting. Had seen some whispers about that, but not written out that directly yet by John Wilner anyway. So Washington seemed to be very unhappy where things were going there. Joe, what's going on, Joe? Appreciate you, Joe. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of the channel. Joe says, hey, John, your Cats were tough, but it just played out like it normally does. OSU wins in Stillwater and K-State wins in Manhattan. That is true. That is true. That is how that series has gone, man. And like, even when it doesn't really make all that much sense, obviously, like this year and then last year with the way it went for K-State. I mean, there have been so many games like that. Outside of 2017, Byron Pringle and K-State upset a really good Oklahoma State team. That's been it. K-State has lost its 8 of 9 now in Stillwater. So like I do not like playing in that place. I mean, I would so much rather play in Norman than I would in Stillwater. People asking me if I was going to go to that. I was like, Nate, you're crazy. I've seen too many losses for K-State and Stillwater. But Joe finishes off. Good luck to Coach Kleiman and the Cats the rest of the year. And hey, same to Mike Gundy and the Pokes, man. Same to Mike Gundy and the Pokes. I would extend the same well wishes there. So I appreciate you, Joe. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your kind words and for supporting the work that I'm doing here on this channel. Nick, what's up, Nick? Nick checking in again. Nick says, new Big 12 programs are winless against historic Big 12 programs so far. It won't stay that way, but a little surprised by that start. I think the Baylor UCF game showed how important roster depth is in our league versus the AAC. Yeah, huge part of it, huge piece of it. And now UCF should theoretically have more of it than anybody if you're looking at the talent composite. And UCF has a big class coming in next year, which I know is really going to start to help. But yeah, you've got to develop that. And that is the type of thing that when you are, even as much as like Baylor is struggling this year, that is a program that does have depth and like depth that's used to being in games and fighting for 60 minutes against Big 12 caliber opponents. And that's just a little different and a little tougher to do when you've been in positions. I mean, I said it last week, like when I pick on Tulsa a lot in this analogy. I'm sorry, Tulsa. But if you're playing Tulsa and you get up by 4 touchdowns, much better chance that you can coast the rest of the way as opposed to like Baylor. I mean, that's a team that won the Big 12 championship 2 years ago. Like they're not going to just fold up shop and pack it in and leave. And they've got enough guys that they can still throw out there in waves that it's going to be a tougher, much tougher to do. And yes, I do think you've seen UCF run into some of that. But yeah, no, this isn't going to last the whole year. They'll win some games against the traditional Big 12 schools here the rest of the year. But it has been a dose of reality that I think, like, you know, some of us like hateful haters tried to kind of, you know, softly say like, hey, you know, you maybe want to be a little bit careful with being too boisterous and brash about coming into this conference because there may well be a ramp up period here. Now, I mean, that seems pretty vindicated. So yeah, I think you're spot on with that, Nick. I think you're spot on. Roster depth is something that will have to be developed and can and will be developed because your recruiting will start to get better as you're in a conference now. You can sell that to people and, you know, look, no, like TCU wasn't setting the world on fire right away, but eventually they got up and running and they recruited really well in DFW and utilized their advantages there. And now they've been a program that's perfectly capable of jumping up for a 12-win season every now and then. Even as down in the dumps as they look now, last year they were obviously playing for a national championship. So it can be done and it will happen. It's not like these schools are never to be heard from again, but some cold water thrown on their Big 12 starts for sure. So thank you, Nick. Thank you for being here. And thank you for your support of the channel as always. R-Web, what's up, R-Web? R-Web says Georgie's buddy versus Endeavor advantage Big 12 Karen. No doubt. As much crap as Endeavor and Big 12 Karen got, it was so much stronger of a position for the Big 12 to be in than George Kliavkoff just taking his old buddy. Doug Perlman was the guy that ran Sports Media Advisors. And I want to say he was like a college buddy. I mean, they go way back. It was a buddy from a long time ago. And there have been multiple references from Canzano and Wilner at people in the industry giving that a side eye and being kind of like, what is he doing with that? And that definitely proved to be problematic. Definitely proved to be problematic for the league. So yeah, it's funny. It's funny, you know, in the moment, I don't know that you would have gotten a ton of admission about that from Pac-12 country, but now after the fact, you certainly do. So I guess we all just have to give ourselves a little pat on the back here for believing in, trusting, and loving Karen. I mean, I know I was taking those paychecks and sitting in a brand new house thanks to Karen. Thank you, Karen. That's actually a lie. I'm trying to look for a house right now. And it is tough, man. It is tough on us millennials out here trying to become homeowners. So maybe we could use another round of realignment. Whoever was talking about the ACC, let's get that going so I can start taking in checks again. I need more Karen checks to make sure we get the good old down payment on that house. No, anyway, I appreciate you, R-Web. Buzzer beater here from Daniel. What's up, Daniel? Buzzer beater from Daniel. I appreciate the support. Daniel says, the one time I visited Stillwater was 1993, and I had a pleasant experience as Chad May had a last-second drive to beat Oklahoma State. Happier times, go Cats. Oh, I remember that. Brad Seib in the back of the end zone. Mitch Holtis was calling that game with like laryngitis, and you could barely hear him. And yes, that was a crazy drive for Chad May and co. Kevin Lockett had a sick catch on that drive. Like, that was a fun one. That was a fun one for sure in the early days of Bill Snyder getting things turned around in his first bowl season in K-State. So love that memory, Daniel. I'm always here for Snyder 1.0 talk, man. I consider myself a Snyder 1.0 historian for sure. So I'm with you on that. That would be a great one to be at. I was actually there as a kid in 1995. K-State also won that game. But after that, 2017, the only other time that I've seen K-State actually win in Stillwater. And I covered 5 of those games as a professional. Daniel, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. All of you who have been here tonight. Thank you for being very energetic, very fun tonight. Great chat about everything going on in the league. I think I hit pretty much everything I need to in the league. Was there a game that I didn't really get to? You know what? I will say Texas, two notes here. Texas Tech is somebody that I probably didn't talk about quite enough. I know I mentioned it briefly, but I think they still have a chance to be very competitive coming down the stretch and make some noise. If I were Texas, I would still be looking at that game now like that is a losable game. It didn't appear that way a couple of weeks ago. If Taj Brooks continues to be a superstar the way that he has been, and I mean, I know Baron Morton is not perfect, but some of those, I mean, the 2 touchdown passes that I saw in that first half, like, no, those are pretty nice plays. And the defensive line has been pretty darn good for Texas Tech too. They got 6 sacks. They held Baylor to 0.6 yards per carry. Like, I don't know. Tech to me, if you want a team that could really play spoiler here the rest of the way and make things pretty interesting, I think Tech definitely could be that. I did not think that they would be totally down and out, and they certainly are not. And Baylor, I don't think I got to the Monterey Baldwin quote. Monterey Baldwin, Baylor receiver, says, quote, "I feel like some people are just here for the ride. That's not what we're here for. There's some growing up we have to do." So he was not shy about calling out the team and their effort and where things are at right now. And that's definitely not a good sign about where Baylor and Aranda are at. So I know it's like UCF, Baylor, TCU, at least for this week, K-State fans, all pretty down in the dumps. Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas Tech, Iowa State, all much more up this week. I know West Virginia still probably riding pretty high off of what they did last week too. So the ebbs and flows of this league are crazy. I think this has been a pretty good learning experience and test for what it's going to be like for all these different fan bases dealing with life in the new Big 12, because I would imagine this is how it's going to probably go more often than not in this league as we move forward in the era of the new Big 12. So with that, you guys, please spread the word about the channel. Tell your friends and family. Spread it on social media, Twitter, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is that you're hanging out. Make sure that you spread the word about the channel, even word of mouth, telling your friends and family, Facebook groups that are fans of your team, fans of the conference, whatever it might be. I appreciate all of you for helping me grow this community that has turned into such an awesome thing that we got going on here. Like the video on your way out the door. I would really appreciate that. That always helps me as well. Leave a comment in the comment section. Even if you disagree, let me know about it in the comment section. That helps spike that YouTube algorithm. And if you are so inclined and you did not catch this live, it is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you'd like to support the channel there as well. With that, I think we'll plan on talking to you guys on Wednesday for the show. And between now and then, if anything breaks, I'll get you a video out there about that as well. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Have a great start to your week, and I will talk to everybody soon.